Okay, what the heck is stability anyways? Now, if you're here, it's probably because, you're curious as to what we're going to talk about, how we're going to integrate it, how we're going to connect it. But the biggest thing I want everyone to get from this workshop is you're going to walk away with something. So it will start out with a little bit of education. Then we're going to look into how to assess if you have stability. And then we're going to learn how to connect and integrate it into your life. So everything that we cover within these workshops, there's always going to be an assess component, a connect component, and an integrate component. So for this one, I really felt like I needed to cover this stability because it's kind of a common theme that's thrown out, but nobody really understands what it is, and also how to assess if you need it or not. Okay, so I have a couple analogies that I like to run past people to kind of share what it means when you lack stability. So stability is your ability for your body to stabilize you through movements. Okay, now in saying that, there's lots of different interactions between your joints, your core, there's all these little parts that kind of have to synchronize and work together to be the most effective when you move. Okay, so if you think about so a common thing I like to say is if you think about a canoe and you put a big cannon in it, okay, and now you blow something out of that cannon in a canoe. So you think, if you really think about that happening, what do you think would happen to the canoe? So you'll probably, explode the canoe into pieces. It'll probably get sunk, but you can think about how you're not really creating the ability for that cannon to launch off something that's stable, because a canoe floating in the water is obviously not very stable. And then what happens? It ends up hurting the canoe and really not going very far when it comes to how far whatever you shoot out of a canoe or out of a cannon, right? Another analogy I like to use is, so if you think about a wheel, and this is my artwork, so don't make fun of me. So think about a wheel, and it has all these spokes, right? Our body will always go from point A to point B, but how effective are we when we do it? Okay, so if you think about a wheel and it has all the spokes, right? And the spokes is what keeps it round as you go to travel. Okay, now so that's kind of the structure, the stability of the wheel. Now, if I was to take some of the spokes out of the wheel, and now this is prime artwork right here. Now, do you see how the wheel, now I've taken out a spoke, and now you can see how the wheel is still round except for where there's no spoke. So this will still go round and round, but you can imagine how it would be more of a round clunk, round clunk, round clunk, right? So if you think of when you take stability away from something, like taking a spoke out of a wheel, you will still move from point A to point B, but do you see how much more labored it would be if you removed a spoke and not smooth and clunky, and you'd probably damage a bunch of other things in the process because it's lacking that structure. So when it comes to our body, we will always move from point A to point B. That's the magic of how your body can really adapt to anything, and how well it adapts. But it might take you a lot more energy to get somewhere if you lack that stability. So if you think about stability in relation to our spine and our pelvis, right? Okay, so for example, I kind of put the muscles in two groups. So you've got your stabilizing muscles. So the little guys that stabilize you through your joints, right? They're like the long distance runners. They can hold a contraction for a really long period of time. And then you've got your mobilizers, so the big guys that move you. So your six pack, your hip flexors, your quads, your hamstrings. And now this is just general. They're the big guys that will move you from point A to point B. Okay. Now, if I lack stability, so the little endurance runners, if they're not supporting me through my movement, it's going to be more labored for me to move from point A to point B because I don't have the support system behind it. That doesn't mean that I won't get there. It just means that it will be way harder and it'll take more energy and there's more tension created because your body will adapt. Now, if we bring stability to the party, so we train those little guys to stabilize you from through the joints, then you moving from point A to point B is super easy. So really, like, this is the whole thing of movement comes from a relaxed state. Now, if you're someone that becomes very rigid when you move, so you notice you might hold your breath, you might notice that, you're constantly chasing aching muscles throughout your body, this can be an indication that that stability or the support system for your core and your joints and how you move is not ideal. Okay. So some of the things you can assess to determine if you need to do stability work, and I mean, in my opinion, it's a constant, stability work should be a part of your life, just like eating nutritiously, just like water. It should, because stability is what makes all the big stuff easy. But we tend to go and do the big stuff expecting it to resolve the problems that we might have in our body. So tight muscles, that kind of thing. So when it comes to assessing if you have a stability problem, some of the things I want you to consider is, are you tight? So is there areas in your body that are super tight and that you stretch and you stretch and you stretch, but you're just as tight as you were the last time you stretched? So tension that really doesn't go away no matter what you do. Or it could be also the other spectrum where you might have tension, you try to stretch, and then you feel like you're falling apart because you stretched. Okay, everybody compensates in different ways. So if you take away the support system, so those tight muscles, and you feel worse, that's even all the more reason to create stability, because when you stretch out what's trying to create stability for you, so the tight muscles that are not necessarily doing what they're meant to do, which is why they're tight, and you feel like poop after, it's because they need some sort of support. Or the other end of the spectrum where your muscles are really tight and you feel like you always want to stretch and it feels really good in the moment, but you still are just as tight as you were the last time, that's another indication that they don't have the support and that they're just not willing to let go. And that's just the difference between, some people versus the other. We all adapt in different ways. Okay. Another indication is, like, do you have an ache? Do you have a deep butt ache? Do you have a knee ache? Do you have a mid-back ache? Do you have like that ache that just doesn't want to go away and you feel like you just want to stretch it out? That ache can also be an indication that there's a lack of stability somewhere. Okay. And then another is energy levels. So if you feel like you're doing something, and so say you want to go and you feel like you don't feel that great and you need to get moving and you're doing all the right things and you're working really hard at getting fit, but it's like more of a mental game to actually get yourself to do it versus like enjoying it and then feeling good after. It's more like, I need to have a nap because I worked out. Oh my God, like I have to work out again. So that is also an indication that you don't have the support. So your body's working really hard and now you're adding more stress to an already stressed body to do work harder. So it's this whole mental struggle that most of us have is like, I'm supposed to do this. I need to do this. Like, if you need to walk, but you feel like crap at the end of a walk, but you need to do it, it's not what you're doing. It's more of how you're doing it. So you just need to look into what your body's missing so that it can produce and actually you can, achieve what you're trying to achieve, which is ultimately, like, we all work out, we all walk because we think it's going to make us feel better, which if we have that support system behind us, so stability, then yes, we will feel better. But if you're doing what you think you should be doing and you don't feel better, then you need to do something different. Okay, so there's another kind of, or it's even, it could be weight loss. Like if you feel like you're working really hard and you're trying to lose weight, so you start working harder and you're working harder and you're not losing any weight, and it doesn't matter what you do, but you can't lose weight. Well, that's another indication. And I mean, there's lots of other factors that can be involved in that. So like hormones and like diet and all that stuff. But usually that's an indication of a stressed system. And when a stressed system is put more stress on it, our body will automatically take things in and store it because it's like in survival mode. So you'll take it and store it instead of actually burning things off is what you're trying to do. So the whole, like, having stability is really what creates freedom and movement, and you'll actually learn that you don't have to work as hard as what you think you should, right? Or another thing you can think about, if you feel like you're falling apart, so like your back hurts and now that's manageable, and then your knee starts to hurt, or then your foot starts to hurt, and you're starting to feel like, oh my god, is this what old age looks like? I don't want to be old. Well, it's not necessarily a factor of age. It's a factor of your body doesn't have the support system that it needs to move. And over time, you start to feel the breakdown. It's just that we don't bounce back as quick as we once did, when you're younger, because you have a lot more compensations that have developed over the years. So then you start to feel like, like you just got to live with it. And I'm telling you, you don't have to live with it. If you build your stability, you create awareness in where you need that stability, then you can, bring back that freedom and movement and what like a relaxed state kind of feels like, which is like movement shouldn't be work. Yes, you can challenge yourself through like cardio and that kind of stuff, but you shouldn't feel like you should have a nap or that your body's breaking down as a result of something that you did. It should be more of like, I feel good and invigorated, and you're not aching, and you're not taking away the ability for you to get in and on and off the toilet. Like whatever efforts you're putting in, you should walk away being better. We're not looking to decrease your ability to move. You're looking to increase your ability to move. So now how you can kind of connect. So we kind of talked about how you would assess if you needed stability. And really, in my opinion, everybody needs stability. It just kind of depends to what degree and who's not talking and looking at the whole system as a whole. But then how you can kind of connect. So now, you go to physio, you go to chiro, you go to like your treatments, right? And they're addressing some of the tension that you have. They're addressing some of your mobility problems. So like chiro will get joints moving that may not be moving. And that's super important because you have to have mobility of your joints in order to create stability. If you don't have mobility of your joints, so if a joint's not moving, it's really hard to create stability because there's like a chain reaction to an area that's not moving that will cause other things to overmove. So there's this dance between the ability to move and the ability to stabilize. But but then at the same time, stability will bring your ability to move. So it's this dance of figuring out where you don't move, creating movement there, right? And then creating the ability to stabilize so that you keep this movement. Again, if you only address the mobility stuff, which is getting your joints moving, and you don't back it up with stability stuff, then you're always going to have an area that doesn't move. And if you do stability stuff and you don't address the mobility stuff, then you're not really going to get anywhere with the stability stuff, and you're going to kind of feel like you need to do it all the time. Okay, now you might, be going to physio and you might be doing the little exercises. So stability work is like the little details of, what's your hip doing, what's your pelvis doing, can like your alignment, you get the details of how that works. So like you could be given, some tubing stuff or like hip rotation stuff. But those are all great, which are really important in how you do it. But if you don't take those little details and build them into how you move in the big picture, then you're gonna feel like you need to do those little details for the rest of your life to survive, right? So there's those people that have those little, like a list of exercises that they have to do all the time. And if they do it all the time, then they're good. And if they take that away, then they fall apart. So then they go back to the little exercises. I'm telling you that you shouldn't have to do the little exercises for the rest of your life. If you learn why or learn what's missing so whether it's like, you lack the ability to move your hip inwards. So then you teach your hip how to move inwards. But then you need to transfer that awareness to how you move walking, how you move, rolling over, how you like into the big picture of like compound movements. Because if you don't link those, then you will constantly feel like you need to do the little exercises. You will feel like you need constant treatment. You will feel like you might be falling apart because it'll start moving around. But all of these things are super important. So I'm all about analogies. So analogy that I kind of use for like looking at how you build your stability is like, imagine that you're going on a dream vacation. You don't just show up at the airport and away you go. There's a bunch of things that need to happen along the way for you to get there, right? So the amount of research that you spend looking at where you're going to go, right? That's different for everyone. How far down the tunnel do you go? And then there's a bunch of things that need to happen when you like to pack to get to the airport. Then once you get to the airport, you need to go through security. There's all these steps. And then you get on the airplane and away you go. Now, if you go through these steps and you get to the airport and you forgot your passport, what happens? Right? You probably can't get on the plane. You're probably pissed off. You're out money. You're going back home. And who knows if you actually get to go again. But more than likely, the whole dream vacation has kind of blown up in your face. So now when we look at the rehab process, there's always the time that it takes for you to address what's going on. So we might have like a little ache or a little, something that's bothering you and you don't know what to do with it. And you think it might go away or it might go away and it kind of comes back and it's not really anything that's affecting what you're doing, but you just kind of notice it. And then if you leave it, it turns into a bigger problem. And then you're like, maybe I should go get treatment. So then you go and get treatment. So that could be like physio or acupuncture or whatever your treatment thing is, or chiro or, something. Or it might be you rolling or stretching or whatever. But the time that it takes from the moment something starts to the time that you get treatment can be different between one person and the other, just like the amount of time that you spent researching where you're going to go on your dream vacation, right? So now you go to that person and they tell you about what's going on, and so you're aware. So the amount of time it takes for you to become aware. Now most people stop at that awareness and they do that treatment and they might do a little bit of exercises and then they go off to like doing dynamic movement because like they're a runner or they're doing boot camps. But now, oh crap, I still have that problem. So then you go back down to the bottom and do I leave it, or maybe I should go get more treatment? So that's kind of similar to what would happen if you forgot your passport and you get sent home. So what happens is you get this awareness, but then you don't take it further into how you integrate it into big movement. So you get the little details, but you don't know what to do with those little details and how you move in the big picture. So you end up keep getting sent back home, pissed off that you've spent all this money and you're not becoming, like, it's not going away. So then you start labeling your parts as I got a bad hip and I got a bad knee and I got a bad back. And you start to modify how you move based on your bad. Or you might start thinking, like, you start, when something comes up, it's like, do I do this and pay for it? Like, you start to weigh your pros and cons before you start doing something. This is all an indication of stability. And then you have to take that stability work and learn how to integrate it into how you move as a whole so that you can move beyond it. But if you're not aware, you don't know where your mobility and stability problems are, then you're constantly going to be bouncing between the treatment and the pain and the stretching and the aching and the like falling it apart. And then you're going to be a canoe that gets blown up from a cannon that shoots off of it. And you just drag the parts to your practitioner to get you to put back together. And then you go back in the boat, try to shoot another one off the canoe. So it's this big, like, it's so unnecessary if you learn about your body and the part, like, and everybody's different. And the only person that has control of how to actually take the time and become aware of in your body of what you're missing and creating the connection, like, you're the only one that can do that. You can have a guide, but at the end of the day, you're the one that has control over your body. And if you're not doing some sort of stability work and then integrating it into life, then you might spend more time and more money getting treatments. And that's fine too. But it really, how far and how good do you want to feel moving through life? So that's kind of all I wanted to cover. I know this one's a little bit shorter than the other ones will be because we'll get more into exercise. But I really feel like understanding, why we need the stability is so important to understanding why we feel the way we feel and how you can actually move beyond it. And really, like, it's not a matter of, finding something that you're really bad at. And so, like, say you struggle with lunges, and so you're going to work harder at doing lunges. So it as, like, just in our how we work is, I'm bad, I struggle with that, so I need to work harder at that, right? So if you struggle with lunges, look beyond the lunge. Look beyond why you might struggle with the lunges. It's not, I can't do lunges, so I should do more of them. It's, no, what do I need to work on to create a better lunge? So is it hip stability? Is it my pelvis position? Is it my contact with my foot on the floor? Is it my ability to engage the front and the back of my leg? Is it, and it's not like turn on, squeeze. It's just the more you can find out about what you're missing, the easier that movement will become. So if you're missing glute stability or hip mechanics or whatever it is, you create that connection and then you find out what's missing in your lunge becomes easier. It's not finding the hard and then working harder at it. So when you bring stability to a movement, everything becomes easier. So keep that in mind. When you're doing something, find whatever adjustment that makes it easier. Don't find the adjustment that makes it harder, because finding the adjustment that makes it harder actually feeds the problem. If you find the adjustment that makes it easier, it is solving the problem, because movement comes from a relaxed state. Now, these concepts, how I kind of talk about things, everything has a component of assess, connect, and integrate. And in my membership, I cover, like, everything that has to do with your body, really. I talk about your diaphragm, I talk about your pelvis, I talk about your hip, I talk about your knee, your foot, your shoulder, your hand, your elbow. And the 7 courses within the foundations is you going through all the parts. So it's like you're going over the checklist to find out what's missing in your movement. And some of the things you'll be like, oh, this is easy. Well, then you don't need to worry about it. And then, oh, like this one, oh, that's fine. So what you're going to do is learn things about your body that you can then transfer to whatever you're doing. So this isn't an exercise program. This is creating awareness, connection, stability, and connecting it to the big picture program. So it's overall health that you can transfer to whatever you do so that you can then continue doing what you love instead of removing stuff. And then going for a walk, which was once, maybe miserable, turns into being joyful and energy and actually fills you up rather than a mental struggle of forcing yourself to do it because you feel like it's good for you.